Finally, we are free of that kind of drama, Richard says, raising a glass of champagne to his fiancée in front of his approving family. To a future with no complications. Just as everyone cheers, the grand doorbell rings, echoing through the mansion. His mother looks annoyed, but Richard smirks, completely unaware of what's coming. What they didn't know was that on the other side of that door was the past he tried to bury, multiplied by 4. But before we see how Sarah makes them pay, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel and let's get into the full story. I'm not your maid today, Blake. I'm the mother of your children. Sarah Johnson's alarm buzzed at 5 o'clock in the morning. She reached over and turned it off before it could ring a second time. The small apartment in South Boston was quiet except for the occasional car passing by outside. She sat up on the edge of her bed and glanced at her bank account balance on her phone. $73.14. Not enough. Sarah sighed and walked to the bathroom. She had exactly 45 minutes to shower, dress, and catch the bus to Beacon Hill. Mrs. Miller hated when staff arrived late. Outside, the morning air was cold. Sarah pulled her thin jacket tighter as she waited at the bus stop. She watched Boston wake up through the bus windows as they moved from her working-class neighborhood toward the wealthy part of town where the Millers lived. "Morning, Thomas," Sarah greeted the butler as she entered through the service entrance of the massive brick mansion on Beacon Hill. "Good morning, Sarah," Thomas replied, checking his watch. "Mrs. Miller wants the upstairs bathrooms completely redone today. They have guests coming for dinner." Sarah nodded and headed to the staff closet to get her cleaning supplies. She had been working for the Miller family for 3 years now. 3 years of polishing silver she would never own and washing windows that looked out on a life she would never have. Sarah was dusting the hallway when Mrs. Eleanor Miller walked past her without a glance. Sarah became invisible as usual. Mrs. Miller was talking on her phone about a charity event while Sarah continued working, used to being unnoticed. "Need help with that?" Sarah turned around, startled. Blake Miller stood behind her, watching as she struggled with a heavy bucket of cleaning supplies. "I'm fine, thank you, Mr. Miller," Sarah said, trying to maintain professionalism. "Please, it's Blake," he said, taking the bucket from her hands. "Where are you taking this?" "The third-floor bathrooms," Sarah replied, surprised by his kindness. Blake carried the bucket upstairs while Sarah followed, uncertain about this break in routine. Blake Miller was 30 years old, handsome with striking blue eyes and perfect teeth that came from expensive dental work. He was the heir to Miller Enterprises, a technology company worth billions. "You've worked here for 3 years now?" Blake asked as they reached the top of the stairs. "Yes," Sarah answered, surprised he knew. "Yet I barely know anything about you," Blake said, putting down the bucket. "There's not much to know," Sarah replied. "I doubt that," Blake said with a smile that made Sarah look away. "Everyone has a story." Later that evening, Sarah served dinner to the Miller family. William Miller, the company founder, sat at the head of the table reviewing business documents between bites. Eleanor Miller discussed charity commitments with a friend on the phone while eating small portions of the expensive meal. Blake occasionally made eye contact with Sarah as she served, something his parents never did. "Sarah, this fish is perfectly cooked," Blake commented. "I just served it, Mr. Miller." "Your chef prepared it," Sarah corrected quietly. "Still, your service makes the meal," Blake said, holding her gaze a moment too long. 2 weeks later, the Millers prepared to leave for their summer home in Martha's Vineyard. "Blake, aren't you coming?" Eleanor asked as the staff loaded luggage into the cars. "I have to stay and finish the Thompson deal," Blake explained. "I'll join you next weekend." After the family left, the mansion felt different. Sarah worked through her usual tasks, surprised when Blake appeared in the kitchen that evening. "Have you eaten?" he asked. "No, Mr. Miller," Sarah replied. "Blake," he corrected, "and you should eat. In fact, let's both eat. I hate dining alone." They sat at the kitchen island instead of the formal dining room. Blake opened a bottle of wine and asked Sarah about her life. The conversation flowed easily as Sarah relaxed. "I was studying accounting before I started working here," Sarah admitted after her second glass of wine. "Why did you stop?" Blake asked. Sarah hesitated. "My parents died in a car accident during my sophomore year. The medical bills and funeral costs. I had to drop out." Blake's expression softened. "I'm sorry. That must have been incredibly difficult." "It was," Sarah said simply, "but everyone has problems. Not everyone handles them with your grace," Blake replied. The next evening, Blake showed Sarah his father's art collection. "My father collects the pieces, but I don't think he really sees them," Blake explained. "He views them as investments." "And how do you see them?" Sarah asked. "As stories," Blake said, standing closer to her than necessary. "Each one captures a moment of truth." A week later, during a sudden summer rainstorm, Blake found Sarah closing windows in the garden room. "You're soaked," he laughed, handing her a towel. "It came out of nowhere," Sarah said, accepting the towel with a smile. Blake stepped closer. "You know, you have the most honest smile I've ever seen." Before Sarah could respond, he leaned forward and kissed her. Sarah knew she should pull away. This was her employer's son. This would only lead to trouble. Instead, she kissed him back. Their relationship developed over the next 6 months in stolen moments when the family was traveling or occupied with social events. Late-night conversations in the kitchen, walks in the garden, and eventually intimate moments in Blake's apartment when his parents were away. "Doesn't it bother you?" Sarah asked one night as they lay together. "The difference between us?" "What difference?" Blake asked, tracing her cheek with his finger. "We're just two people, Sarah. The rest is noise." Sarah wanted to believe him. For 6 months, she did. When Sarah missed her period, she bought 3 pregnancy tests. All positive. She spent 3 days deciding how to tell Blake, hoping he would react with the same warmth he had shown her over the past months. Sarah found Blake in his home office on a Tuesday afternoon while his parents attended a function. "I need to talk to you," Sarah said, her hands shaking. "Sure, what's up?" Blake smiled, setting aside his laptop. "I'm pregnant," Sarah said, the words hanging in the air between them. Blake's expression changed instantly. The warmth vanished from his eyes. "You're what?" "Pregnant," Sarah repeated. "About 8 weeks." Blake stood up and walked to the window, his back to her. When he turned around, Sarah didn't recognize the cold man before her. "This is your problem," he said flatly. "Not mine." "Blake, We had fun, Sarah. But let's be real. You're the maid. What did you expect?" The next morning, Sarah was called to the foyer where Eleanor Miller waited with a cold expression. "My son tells me you've been making some ridiculous claims," Eleanor said, her voice sharp as glass. "I won't have staff trying to trap my family for money." "Mrs. Miller, You're fired, effective immediately. If you ever contact my family again, we will take legal action. Is that clear?" From the staircase, Sarah saw Blake watching silently, his face emotionless. Sarah returned to her room and packed her few belongings into a backpack. She counted her savings, $200. She took one last look at the mansion that had been her home and workplace for 3 years and walked out the front door. At the bus station, Sarah purchased a ticket to Portland, Maine, where her Aunt Maggie lived. As the bus pulled away from Boston, Sarah placed her hand on her stomach. One life was growing inside her, a life that would connect her to the Millers forever, whether they wanted it or not. She had no way of knowing that the single baby she thought she carried would become 4, or that in 3 years she would return to upend the Miller family's perfect world. The bus rolled into Portland just as the sun was setting. Sarah stepped onto the terminal platform with her backpack and the crumpled piece of paper containing her Aunt Maggie's address. The long ride from Boston had given her time to think, but no clarity on what would happen next. Sarah walked 3 blocks before finding a payphone. She inserted 2 quarters and dialed the number. "Aunt Maggie? It's Sarah. I'm in Portland and I need help." 30 minutes later, a blue sedan pulled up. A woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair rolled down the window. "Sarah Johnson, you look like you haven't eaten in days," Aunt Maggie said, opening the passenger door. Sarah climbed in, her backpack clutched to her chest. "Thank you for coming." "Family helps family," Aunt Maggie replied simply. "Your mother would haunt me if I left her daughter standing at a bus station." Aunt Maggie's house was small but welcoming. The kitchen smelled of fresh bread and coffee. Sarah sat at the worn wooden table while her aunt prepared tea. "I lost my job," Sarah began. "That fancy house in Boston?" Aunt Maggie placed a steaming mug in front of her. "What happened?" Sarah's hands trembled around the warm mug. "I'm pregnant." Aunt Maggie sat down across from Sarah. "And the father?" "The son of the family I worked for," Sarah said, tears filling her eyes. "He wants nothing to do with me or the baby." Aunt Maggie reached across the table and squeezed Sarah's hand. "Then we'll manage without him." "I only plan to stay until I find work," Sarah said. "I don't want to be a burden." "Nonsense," Aunt Maggie replied. "I've been alone in this house since your uncle passed. Stay as long as you need." 2 weeks later, Sarah found a job as a bookkeeper for a local hardware store. The pay was modest, but enough to start saving again. She also scheduled her first prenatal appointment at Portland Medical Center. "First pregnancy?" asked Dr. Karen Wilson, a kind-faced woman in her 40s. "Yes," Sarah replied nervously. "Let's take a look," Dr. Wilson said, preparing the ultrasound machine. She moved the wand across Sarah's still flat stomach, then stopped. Her eyebrows shot up. "Is something wrong?" Sarah asked, panic rising in her chest. "Not wrong, just unexpected," Dr. Wilson said, staring at the screen. "Sarah, I'm seeing multiple fetuses." "Twins?" Sarah whispered. Dr. Wilson shook her head slowly. "I need to get a colleague to confirm, but I'm counting 4 separate heartbeats." Sarah lay frozen as a second doctor entered the room and confirmed what seemed impossible. She was carrying quadruplets. "Natural quadruplets are extremely rare," Dr. Wilson explained later in her office. "Less than 1 in 700,000 pregnancies. You're looking at a high-risk pregnancy that will require specialized care." Sarah's mind raced. 1 baby had seemed overwhelming. 4 was unimaginable. "Will they be healthy?" Sarah asked. "There are risks," Dr. Wilson said honestly. "Premature birth is likely. You'll need frequent monitoring and eventually bed rest." That night, Sarah called the one person who might understand her situation. "Blake," she said when he answered, "I need to tell you something important." "I thought Eleanor made things clear," Blake replied coldly. "Don't contact me again." "I'm carrying quadruplets," Sarah said quickly before he could hang up. 4 babies, Blake." The line went silent for several seconds. "That's not possible," Blake finally said. "You're lying to get my attention. I have the ultrasound pictures." "Don't call this number again," Blake interrupted. "My lawyer will be in touch if you continue this harassment." The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone, then placed her hand on her stomach. "It's just us now," she whispered. By her 5th month of pregnancy, Sarah could barely move around Aunt Maggie's house. Her normally slim frame now supported 4 growing babies, and her doctor had ordered modified bed rest. "I'm costing you too much," Sarah told Aunt Maggie one evening. "I can't work. I can barely help around the house." "Stop that talk right now," Aunt Maggie interrupted. "My sister's daughter is not going through this alone." While Sarah remained confined to Portland, life in Boston continued. One evening, Aunt Maggie brought in a business magazine that featured Blake Miller on the cover. "Is that him?" Aunt Maggie asked. Sarah nodded, reading the caption. "Blake Miller, heir to Miller Enterprises, with Vanessa Thompson at the annual Boston Business Leaders Gala." The photo showed Blake smiling beside a beautiful blonde woman in an expensive gown. They looked perfect together. 2 people from the same world. "He's already moved on," Sarah said quietly. In Sarah's 7th month, her water broke during a routine doctor's appointment. Everything happened quickly after that. Nurses rushing, doctors giving orders, and Sarah being wheeled into an operating room. "We need to do a C-section immediately," Dr. Wilson explained. "The babies are coming too early." Sarah nodded, terrified but determined. "Save my babies," she pleaded. Hours later, Sarah woke up in recovery. Dr. Wilson stood beside her bed, smiling. "4 healthy girls," she announced. "They're small and will need to stay in the NICU for a while, but all their vital signs are strong." "Girls? All 4? Sarah whispered. "Identical," Dr. Wilson confirmed. "A true medical marvel." 2 days later, a nurse wheeled Sarah to the neonatal intensive care unit. 4 tiny babies lay in special incubators, each connected to monitors and tubes. "Can I touch them?" Sarah asked. "Of course," the nurse said, helping Sarah sanitize her hands. "They need their mother's touch." Sarah gently placed her finger in the tiny palm of the first baby. The perfect little hand closed around her finger. "Hello, Emma," Sarah whispered, having chosen the name weeks before. She moved to each baby in turn. Olivia, Ava, Sophia. The Portland Herald ran a small story about the quadruplets the following week. Portland woman delivers identical quadruplets. Medical marvel births. Healthy girls. The article mentioned Sarah by name but honored her request not to name the father. The next year passed in a blur of diaper changes, bottle feedings, and very little sleep. When the girls turned 1, Sarah had completed her online accounting certification and was working 2 jobs: bookkeeping for several local businesses during the day and waiting tables at a 24-hour diner at night. Aunt Maggie helped care for the girls while Sarah worked. Every night, Sarah updated her spreadsheet tracking Blake Miller's public activities. She noted his promotion to vice president at Miller Enterprises. She saved the newspaper announcement of his engagement to Vanessa Thompson. She watched from a distance as he built the perfect life she and her daughters were excluded from. As the twins approached their 3rd birthday, Sarah saw an article in the Boston Globe. Annual Miller Christmas Charity Gala set to break fundraising records. "I think it's time," Sarah told Aunt Maggie that evening as they watched the 4 identical girls playing on the living room floor. Each had Blake's distinctive blue eyes and dimpled chin. "Time for what?" Aunt Maggie asked, though her expression suggested she already knew. "Time for the Millers to meet their granddaughters," Sarah said. "These girls deserve to know where they come from." "And if they reject them?" Aunt Maggie asked gently. Sarah looked at her daughters. Emma building with blocks, Olivia drawing with crayons, Ava humming a tune, and Sophia arranging toy animals in a perfect line. "Then at least I'll know I did everything possible to give them their full heritage." The next day, Sarah purchased 4 matching red dresses and began packing the minivan she had bought with her savings. She studied the invitation to the Miller Charity Gala she had found online, noting the date and time. "Boston," she told the girls as she helped them into their car seats. "We're going to see a beautiful city where Mommy used to live." As Portland disappeared in her rearview mirror, Sarah rehearsed what she would say when she faced Blake Miller again. This time she wasn't the invisible maid. This time she had 4 perfect reasons to make the Millers see her. The drive from Portland to Boston took nearly 3 hours. Sarah checked the rearview mirror often to see her 4 daughters, who eventually fell asleep in their car seats. The Boston skyline appeared as the sun began to set, tall buildings glowing against the darkening sky. "Girls, wake up," Sarah said softly. "We're here." 4 identical faces with sleepy blue eyes looked back at her. "Is this where the party is?" Emma asked, the most talkative of the 4. "Not yet," Sarah replied. "We're going to stay at a hotel first." Sarah navigated through the familiar streets of Boston, memories flooding back with each turn. She pulled into the parking lot of the Dorchester Inn, a modest hotel she'd found online that wouldn't drain her limited savings. The desk clerk looked surprised when Sarah entered with 4 identical little girls in matching travel outfits. "Reservation for Sarah Johnson," she said, trying to keep the girls from wandering. "ID and credit card, please," the clerk responded, watching as Olivia and Ava spun in circles while Emma examined a pamphlet rack. Sarah handed over her documents and gathered Sophia, who had wandered toward the vending machines. "Girls, please stay close to Mommy." After checking in, Sarah led the quadruplets to their room on the second floor. It was small but clean with 2 double beds. "Can we jump on the beds?" Ava asked immediately. "No jumping," Sarah said firmly. "We need to rest. Tomorrow is a very important day." Later, after the girls were bathed and in their pajamas, Sarah sat on the edge of the bed looking at her phone. She had saved the invitation to the Miller Charity Gala from the Boston Globe website. The event would start at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening at the Miller Mansion in Beacon Hill. Sarah opened her suitcase and carefully removed 4 identical red velvet dresses with white collars. She had spent 3 months saving for these outfits, wanting the girls to look perfect when they met their father's family. "These are pretty," Olivia said, touching one of the dresses. "You'll wear them tomorrow," Sarah explained. "We're going to a special party." "Will there be cake?" Emma asked. Sarah smiled. "I don't know, sweetie. But you're going to meet some new people." "Who?" Sophia asked quietly. She was always the most observant of the 4. Sarah hesitated. "Family," she finally said. "People who are related to you." The next morning, Sarah woke early and reviewed the contents of the folder she'd prepared months ago. Inside were birth certificates for all 4 girls, DNA test results she'd obtained using strands of Blake's hair she had kept, text messages they'd exchanged during their relationship, and dated photographs that proved their time together. After breakfast, Sarah spent the day preparing the girls and herself for the evening ahead. She brushed their identical dark blonde hair and arranged it with matching red headbands. The red velvet dresses fit perfectly, making the girls look like a Christmas card come to life. For herself, Sarah wore the only nice outfit she owned, a simple black dress from a consignment shop. She applied light makeup and pulled her hair back into a neat bun. "Remember what we practiced," Sarah told the girls as they stood in a row for her inspection. "When someone asks your name, you say it clearly. Emma, Olivia, Ava, Sophia." "Yes, Mommy," they replied in unison. At 6:30 that evening, Sarah loaded the girls into her minivan and drove to Beacon Hill. Christmas decorations illuminated the historic neighborhood. Expensive cars lined the street near the Miller Mansion, which glowed with lights and greenery. Sarah parked a block away and took a deep breath. "This is it, girls. Remember to hold hands and stay with Mommy." She helped her daughters from the car, making sure each looked perfect. With her folder in one hand and Emma's small hand in the other, Sarah began walking toward the mansion she'd once known so well. Olivia held Emma's other hand, followed by Ava and Sophia, forming a chain of little girls in red dresses. Through the large front windows, Sarah could see the elegant crowd inside. Servers in black and white carried trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above women in designer dresses and men in tuxedos. In the center of it all stood Blake Miller, raising a glass for a toast. Beside him was Vanessa Thompson, wearing a silver gown and a large diamond ring. Sarah approached the front door, her heart pounding. The same butler who had worked there during her time as a maid opened the door. "Thomas," Sarah said. The butler's eyes widened in recognition, then widened further as he noticed the 4 identical little girls behind her. "Miss Johnson," he stammered. "I don't think I'm here for the gala," Sarah said, walking past him before he could stop her. The girls followed obediently, looking around with wide eyes at the grand entrance hall. Sarah paused at the doorway to the ballroom. Inside, Blake was speaking. "To new beginnings and leaving old mistakes behind," he announced to the crowd of about 200 guests. "Vanessa and I thank you all for celebrating with us tonight." Sarah took a deep breath and stepped forward. The girls moved with her, still holding hands as practiced. As they entered, a wave of silence spread from the door across the room. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Glasses froze halfway to lips. All eyes turned toward the unexpected arrivals. Blake was the last to notice. He lowered his champagne glass, his sentence trailing off as he saw Sarah standing there with 4 little girls who all had his blue eyes and dimpled chin. The champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor. "Meet your daughters, Blake," Sarah said, her voice carrying across the silent room. Chaos erupted immediately. People began whispering and pointing. Vanessa Thompson grabbed Blake's arm, her face demanding an explanation. Eleanor Miller moved quickly through the crowd, her designer gown swishing as she approached Sarah. "What is the meaning of this?" Eleanor hissed, trying to keep her voice down while smiling tightly at nearby guests. "Thomas, escort these people out immediately." "I think we should discuss this privately," William Miller said, appearing beside his wife. Unlike Eleanor, he was staring at the 4 little girls with undisguised interest. "There's nothing to discuss," Blake said, pushing through the crowd. "This is ridiculous. Security, remove this woman." "Ladies and gentlemen," Eleanor announced to the room, "we apologize for this unexpected interruption. Due to a family matter, we must conclude this evening's festivities early." The guests began filing out, many lingering to stare at Sarah and the quadruplets. Vanessa's parents pulled her away from Blake, whispering urgently in her ear. Within 15 minutes, the ballroom had emptied except for the Miller family, Sarah, and the girls. "What do you want?" Eleanor demanded once the last guest had gone. "Money? Is that why you've created this spectacle?" Sarah opened her folder. "I want nothing from you except acknowledgement of your granddaughters. I have birth certificates, DNA test results, and evidence of my relationship with Blake." "This is absurd," Blake sputtered. "She was our maid." "She's clearly delusional." Eleanor pulled out her checkbook. $50,000 if you leave now and never contact our family again." "I'm not here for money," Sarah replied calmly. The quadruplets, overwhelmed by the tension, began to grow restless. Sophia started to cry, which triggered tears from Ava as well. William Miller, who had been silent until now, stepped forward and knelt down to the girl's eye level. "Hello there," he said gently. "My name is William. What are your names?" The girls looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. "I'm Emma," said the first. "I'm Olivia," said the second. "I'm Ava," said the third, wiping away tears. "I'm Sophia," whispered the fourth, still sniffling. William smiled at them. "It's very nice to meet you. I think I might be your grandfather." "William!" Eleanor exclaimed. "Don't encourage this." William stood and took the folder from Sarah's hands. "Let's look at the evidence before we make any judgments." Blake paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair. "This is a nightmare. Vanessa is going to call off the engagement." "Perhaps you should have thought of that before," William said sharply, examining the documents in Sarah's folder. "These children do look remarkably like you did at that age, Blake," William continued, "and these DNA results, if authentic, are quite conclusive." "Those could be faked," Blake argued. "Then we'll do new ones," William replied calmly. Eleanor stared at the 4 little girls who were now sitting in a row on an antique sofa, their identical red dresses and blue eyes creating an undeniable image. "How did this happen?" she asked quietly. "I think we all know how it happened, Mother," Blake snapped. Sarah stood protectively near her daughters. "I didn't come here to destroy your family, Mrs. Miller. I came because my daughters deserve to know where they come from, both sides of their heritage." William handed the folder to his wife. "Eleanor, look at the evidence. These are our grandchildren." Eleanor's hand trembled slightly as she took the folder. The quadruplets watched her with curious blue eyes, Blake's eyes. "We should continue this discussion tomorrow," William decided. "It's late, and the children look tired." "Where are you staying?" he asked Sarah. "The Dorchester Inn," Sarah replied. William nodded. "We'll send a car for you tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. We have much to discuss." As Sarah gathered her daughters to leave, Blake blocked their path. "You think you've won something here?" he said in a low voice. "You haven't. This changes nothing." Sarah looked directly into his eyes. "This isn't about winning, Blake. It's about 4 little girls who deserve their father, whether he deserves them or not." Sarah guided the quadruplets back to her minivan, feeling Blake's angry stare on her back. The girls were tired and confused by the evening's events. "Mommy, why was that man mad at us?" Sophia asked as Sarah buckled her into her car seat. "He's not mad at you, sweetie," Sarah answered carefully. "He's just surprised." Back at the Dorchester Inn, Sarah helped the girls change into their pajamas and tucked them into bed. They fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the excitement. Sarah sat on the edge of the bathroom floor, finally allowing herself to cry quietly. She had prepared for many reactions, but the reality of facing the Millers again had been even more difficult than she imagined. At precisely 9 o'clock the next morning, a knock on the hotel room door startled Sarah. She opened it to find a tall man in an expensive suit. "Miss Johnson?" "I'm Robert Parker, the Miller family attorney," he said, handing her his business card. "The Millers have requested your presence at their home at 10 o'clock. "I know, Mr. Miller told me last night," Sarah replied. "I'm here to escort you," Mr. Parker explained. "A car is waiting downstairs." Sarah nodded. "We need a few minutes to get ready." While Sarah dressed the girls in matching blue dresses, she prepared them for the day ahead. "We're going to visit a big house today," she told them. "The same place as last night. There will be more grown-up talk, but I need you to be on your best behavior." "Will the angry man be there?" Emma asked. Sarah paused. "Yes, but remember what I told you. He's not angry at you." The black town car that waited outside the hotel impressed the quadruplets. They had never ridden in such a fancy vehicle. Mr. Parker sat in the front beside the driver while Sarah and the girls filled the back seats. "Pretty car," Olivia said, running her hand along the leather seat. As they drove through Boston toward Beacon Hill, Sarah's anxiety grew. She had her folder of evidence, but she wondered if it would be enough. The Miller mansion looked different in the morning light. Without the gala decorations, it was simply an imposing brick home that Sarah had once cleaned daily. Thomas opened the door as they approached. "Ms. Johnson," he said with a nod. "The family is waiting in Mr. Miller's study." Sarah took a deep breath and led her daughters inside. The house smelled the same, like furniture polish and fresh flowers. They followed Thomas down the hallway to William Miller's wood-paneled study. Inside, William sat behind his massive desk. Eleanor stood by the window and Blake paced near the fireplace. They all looked up when Sarah entered with the quadruplets. "Good morning," William said, standing. "Thank you for coming." "Sit down, please," Eleanor said stiffly, gesturing to chairs arranged in front of the desk. Sarah helped the girls into seats, noticing they looked even smaller in the large leather chairs. "I've reviewed your documentation," William began, "but we'd like to proceed with our own verification process." "Of course," Sarah agreed. Blake stopped pacing. "This is ridiculous. We're entertaining a scam." "Blake, enough," William said firmly. The door opened suddenly and a tall woman with dark hair entered. She looked like a younger, warmer version of Eleanor. "Sorry I'm late," she said. "Traffic from the airport was terrible." "Jennifer?" Blake looked surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Mom called me last night," Jennifer Miller replied. She turned to Sarah. "Hello, I'm Jennifer, Blake's sister." Sarah nodded. "We met briefly when you visited from New York a few years ago." Jennifer looked at the quadruplets with genuine interest. "And these must be my nieces. They certainly look like Millers." She walked over to the girls who were beginning to fidget in the large chairs. "It's probably hard for them to sit still during all this grown-up talk," Jennifer said. "I have an idea." Jennifer moved to a side table and gathered paper and colored pencils from a drawer. She quickly arranged a small activity area in the corner of the study. "Would you like to draw while the adults talk?" she asked the girls kindly. The quadruplets looked at Sarah, who nodded her permission. They moved to the table and began coloring happily. "Now, William continued. Our family doctor can perform DNA tests today if you consent. I consent, Sarah said. But I want to be clear about something. I didn't come here for money. Eleanor stepped forward holding a document. Speaking of money, our attorney has prepared an offer. She handed Sarah the paper. Sarah glanced at it and saw the figure, $2 million. In exchange for your silence and agreement to keep the children away from our family, Eleanor explained. This is very generous. Sarah handed the paper back without hesitation. This isn't about money. It's about my daughters knowing their father and their heritage. Then what do you want? Blake demanded. A monthly check? Your name in the society pages? I want you to acknowledge your daughters, Sarah replied calmly. I want them to know their grandparents, their aunt, and yes, their father. I want them to understand where they come from. Blake's phone rang loudly. He glanced at the screen and looked panicked. I have to take this, he said, stepping out of the study. William watched him go, then turned back to Sarah. Tell me about your life since you left Boston. I live with my aunt in Portland, Sarah explained. I work as a bookkeeper for several businesses during the day. At night, I wait tables at a diner. I've been taking online accounting courses to finish my degree. 4 children on 2 jobs, William said thoughtfully. That must be extremely difficult. We manage, Sarah replied simply. A soft tinkling sound interrupted the conversation. Everyone turned to see little Ava had wandered to an antique piano in the corner of the room. She was pressing the keys gently, fascinated by the sounds. Eleanor walked over to the piano. For a moment, Sarah thought she would scold Ava, but instead Eleanor stood watching as the child explored the keyboard. My mother was a concert pianist, Eleanor said unexpectedly. This was her piano. Ava looked up at Eleanor with curious eyes. It makes pretty sounds. Yes, it does, Eleanor agreed, and for a brief moment her stern expression softened. The door opened again and Blake stormed back in, his face red with anger. That was Vanessa's father, he announced. The Thompsons want an explanation before our merger meeting next week. This is destroying everything. Jennifer rolled her eyes. Always about you, isn't it, Blake? You don't understand what's at stake, Blake snapped. I understand you apparently have 4 daughters you've never acknowledged, Jennifer replied coolly. William stood up. Blake, Jennifer, enough. This isn't helping anyone. He turned to Sarah. Would you mind stepping outside with me for a moment? Sarah followed William into the hallway, glancing back to make sure her daughters were occupied with Jennifer and their coloring. In the corridor, William spoke quietly. Ms. Johnson, Sarah, I want you to know that regardless of how this situation developed, those children are Millers. I can see it in their faces. They are, Sarah agreed. You've clearly done an admirable job raising them under difficult circumstances, William continued. I'd like to hear more about your background. Eleanor mentioned you were studying accounting before you worked here. Yes, at Boston Community College, Sarah explained. My parents died during my sophomore year. The medical bills and funeral costs forced me to drop out. William's expression showed genuine sympathy. I came from humble beginnings myself, though that fact isn't widely known. I worked my way through college and built Miller Enterprises from nothing. He paused, looking thoughtful. I have a proposal. While we sort through this situation, I'd like to offer you and the girls temporary housing in one of our company apartments. It would be more comfortable than a hotel, and it would allow us all some time to figure out the best path forward. Why would you do that? Sarah asked cautiously. Because those are my grandchildren, William replied simply, and because, unlike my son, I believe in taking responsibility for family matters. When they returned to the study, William announced his decision. Sarah and the girls will be staying at the company apartment on Commonwealth Avenue while we resolve these matters. What? Blake exclaimed. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious, William replied firmly. DNA tests will be conducted this afternoon. Until then, I suggest we all take some time to consider what's best for the children. Eleanor looked ready to object, but instead pressed her lips together tightly. Jennifer smiled at Sarah. "The Commonwealth Avenue apartment is lovely. I'll help you get settled." As Sarah gathered her daughters and prepared to leave, Blake blocked the doorway. "This isn't over," he whispered. "You've managed to fool my father, but I know what you're doing." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "The only person being fooled here is you, Blake. You can deny the truth all you want, but it doesn't change the fact that these girls are your daughters." Jennifer appeared beside them. "The car is ready, Sarah. Let's get the girls to their new temporary home." As Sarah led her daughters out of the Miller mansion, she realized she had crossed a line. There was no going back now. For better or worse, her daughters' lives were now entangled with the Miller family. The Commonwealth Avenue apartment was spacious and elegant. Jennifer helped Sarah and the quadruplets settle in, showing them around the two-bedroom unit with its large windows overlooking Boston. "The kitchen is fully stocked," Jennifer explained, opening cabinets. "And I made sure they delivered children's beds for the girls." "Thank you," Sarah said, watching her daughters explore their temporary home with wide eyes. "You didn't have to do all this." Jennifer smiled. "They're my nieces. Of course I did." That evening, after putting the girls to bed, Sarah sat at the kitchen table reviewing her folder of evidence. A knock at the door revealed Dr. Michael Brennan, the Miller family physician. "Ms. Johnson, I'm here for the DNA samples," he said formally. Sarah nodded. "The girls are sleeping. Can we do this without waking them?" "Of course, just a gentle cheek swab." Sarah led him to the bedroom where all 4 girls were sharing a large space. Dr. Brennan carefully collected DNA samples without disturbing their sleep. "Mr. Blake Miller provided his sample this afternoon," Dr. Brennan explained. "We should have results within 48 hours." 3 days later, William Miller called Sarah to his study again. This time only William, Eleanor, and Blake were present. "The results are conclusive," William said, holding a folder. "Blake is the father of your daughters." Blake stared out the window, his jaw clenched. "I told you that already," Sarah said quietly. William nodded. "Yes, you did. And now we have scientific confirmation." "So what happens now?" Sarah asked. Eleanor stepped forward. "We need to control this situation before it gets out of hand." "It's already out of hand," Blake snapped, turning from the window. "Someone leaked information to Boston's social scene. There's already an article online about the Miller quadruplet scandal." William frowned. "How did that happen?" "Someone at the gala must have talked," Eleanor said. "It doesn't matter now. We need to decide how to proceed." Blake's phone buzzed. He checked it and groaned. "The Thompsons want to meet tonight. Vanessa's father texted that they need answers before our merger meeting." "Then you'll give them answers," William said firmly. "You'll tell them the truth and take responsibility." Blake laughed bitterly. "The truth? That I have 4 children with our former maid? That will certainly help the $100 million merger." Sarah stood up. "I should go. This seems like a family matter." "You are family now," William replied. "Like it or not, these decisions affect you and the girls." Later that day, Sarah received a text message from Jennifer. "Want to get out of that apartment? Meet me at Newberry Street at 2 o'clock. Bring the girls." Sarah and the quadruplets met Jennifer outside an upscale children's boutique. The girls, dressed in their simple clothes from Portland, looked out of place among Boston's elite shopping district. "They need proper clothes," Jennifer explained as they entered the store. "And you could use a few things too." Sarah hesitated. "I can't afford these stores." "My treat," Jennifer insisted. "Consider it making up for 3 years of missed birthdays." While the girls tried on dresses, Jennifer spoke quietly to Sarah. "People are talking. I've received 20 calls since yesterday from friends fishing for information." "I'm sorry," Sarah said. "I didn't mean to create problems for your family." Jennifer shook her head. "This is all on Blake. I'm not surprised, honestly. You're not the first woman he's treated poorly." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. "Blake has always been the golden child who got away with everything," Jennifer explained. "Our parents, especially our mother, excused his behavior. I love my brother, but he's never faced consequences." Meanwhile, in downtown Boston, Blake sat across from his personal attorney in a private office. "I need options," Blake said. "How do I minimize child support? Limit my parental obligations?" The attorney, a gray-haired man named Edward Sloan, looked uncomfortable. "Blake, 4 children will require significant support, regardless. And with your family's wealth, the court will set a high amount." "There must be something we can do," Blake insisted. "Make her sign something. Limit my liability." "The DNA test confirms paternity," Edward reminded him. "No judge will let you avoid responsibility." While Sarah shopped with Jennifer, Eleanor Miller sat in a different downtown office facing a private investigator. "Tell me everything about Sarah Johnson," Eleanor demanded. The investigator, a former police detective named Richard Green, opened his laptop. Born and raised in South Boston to working-class parents. Father was a mechanic, mother worked as a school secretary. Good student, earned a partial scholarship to Boston Community College. "Keep going," Eleanor urged. "Parents died in a car accident during her sophomore year. Medical bills and funeral costs forced her to drop out. Started working service jobs, eventually applied for the position at your home." "Criminal record, debts, vices," Eleanor pressed. Richard shook his head. "Nothing. Clean record, excellent work references, managed to support 4 children on modest income in Portland, maintained an apartment, even completed online courses." Eleanor frowned. This wasn't what she expected to hear. The next day, Sarah took the girls to Boston Common. The public park was filled with families enjoying the unusually warm winter day. The quadruplets ran toward the playground equipment, excited to burn off energy. Sarah sat on a bench watching her daughters play when she noticed other mothers glancing her way and whispering. One woman approached her. "Excuse me," she said hesitantly. "Are those the Miller quadruplets? I saw something in Boston's social scene." Sarah nodded uncomfortably. "Yes, they're my daughters." The woman smiled. "They're beautiful." "Don't worry about the gossip. People will talk about anything." Another woman nearby scoffed loudly. "Some people will do anything for money." Sarah felt her face grow hot with embarrassment. She gathered the girls quickly and headed back to the apartment. That evening, Sarah received a text from Blake. "We need to talk. Coming over now." 20 minutes later, Blake knocked on the apartment door. He was wearing a charming smile that Sarah once found irresistible. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice friendly. Sarah hesitated, then stepped aside. "The girls are watching a movie in the bedroom." Blake entered, looking around the apartment. "Nice place. Father always keeps these corporate apartments ready for visiting executives." "What do you want, Blake?" Sarah asked directly. His smile faltered slightly. "I've been thinking about our situation. Maybe I reacted badly at first." "You think?" Sarah said coldly. Blake moved closer. "I was shocked, that's all. But now I've had time to process everything. We could make this work, Sarah. Co-parenting arrangements, financial support for the girls." Sarah crossed her arms. "What changed?" "I realized I have daughters," Blake said, his voice smooth. "I should be part of their lives." "And what does Vanessa think about this plan?" Sarah asked. Blake waved dismissively. "She'll understand. But of course, we'd need some paperwork. Simple confidentiality agreements, that sort of thing." Sarah understood immediately. "You mean you want me to sign something saying I won't embarrass you publicly? That's what this is about." Blake's friendly expression hardened. "Be realistic, Sarah. You're a single mother with 4 kids. My family can make your life very comfortable or very difficult." Neither noticed little Sophia standing in the hallway, watching and listening. She couldn't understand all the words, but she felt the tension. Later, after Blake left, Sophia climbed onto Sarah's lap as she sat on the couch. "Mommy, is the angry man mad at us?" Sophia asked quietly. Sarah felt her heart break. "No, sweetie. He's not mad at you. He's just confused about some grown-up things." "He looked mad," Sophia insisted. Sarah hugged her daughter close. Some people don't know how to show their feelings the right way. The next morning, William called Sarah. "I saw Sophia's question about Blake being angry," he said. "How did you know about that?" Sarah asked, surprised. "The corporate apartments have security systems," William explained. "I reviewed the footage after Blake reported your unreasonable behavior to me." Sarah felt embarrassed and angry. "You've been watching us?" "For security purposes only," William assured her, "but I'm glad I did." "Blake wasn't honest about your conversation." William paused. "I'd like to invite you and the girls to our summer home on Cape Cod this weekend. Get away from the media attention in Boston. Jennifer will join us." "I don't think Blake would want us there," Sarah said cautiously. "Blake isn't invited," William replied. "This is about getting to know my granddaughters in a peaceful setting." After ending the call, Sarah looked out the window at Boston's skyline. This wasn't how she imagined things would go. She had expected resistance, even rejection, but not this complex web of family politics. From the Miller mansion across town, Eleanor watched William make arrangements for the Cape Cod trip. To his surprise, she put down the private investigator's report on Sarah and said, "I'll be coming too. They're my granddaughters as well." Blake watched from the mansion window as 2 cars prepared to leave for Cape Cod the next morning. His father had explicitly told him to stay in Boston and think about his priorities. As the cars pulled away, Blake pulled out his phone and scrolled to a contact. "Mark Davis, Boston Medical Testing Lab." Blake pressed the call button and waited. "Mark, it's Blake Miller. I need a favor. A big one. Can you meet me tonight?" Meanwhile, the 2-car convoy headed south from Boston toward Cape Cod. Sarah drove her minivan, following William's black Mercedes. The quadruplets chattered excitedly in the back seat about seeing the ocean. "Will there be fish?" Emma asked. "Yes, lots of fish in the ocean," Sarah replied, watching the road. "Can we swim?" Olivia questioned. "It's too cold for swimming in December," Sarah explained. "But we can walk on the beach." After an hour and a half, they turned onto a private road that wound through pine trees. The trees parted to reveal a sprawling white house with blue shutters overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. Unlike the Beacon Hill mansion, this home had a relaxed elegance. "Wow!" the girls exclaimed together as they pulled into the circular driveway. William greeted them as they exited their vehicles. "Welcome to Miller Point," he said. "My father built this house 50 years ago." The inside was bright and open with large windows facing the water. A housekeeper named Martha showed them to their rooms on the 2nd floor. "The girls will share this room," Martha said, opening a door to reveal a large space with 4 twin beds. "Ms. Johnson, you're next door." After settling in, they gathered in the great room where a fire burned in a stone fireplace. Eleanor stood by the windows watching the waves crash against the rocky shore below. "The girls should see the beach before it gets dark," William suggested. They bundled up against the December chill and walked down wooden steps to the private beach. The quadruplets ran ahead, fascinated by seashells and smooth stones. "This place is beautiful," Sarah commented as she walked beside William. "It's always been my favorite Miller property," William replied. "Away from business, away from Boston society." Eleanor walked alone, keeping her distance until Ava approached her holding a perfect scallop shell. "Look what I found," Ava said, presenting her treasure. Eleanor hesitated, then took the shell. "Very nice. Do you know what kind it is?" Ava shook her head. "It's a scallop shell," Eleanor explained. "See the ridges? They're like the keys on a piano." Ava's eyes widened with recognition. "Like the piano at your house?" "Yes," Eleanor nodded, surprised by the child's connection. "Exactly like that." Back in Boston, Blake met Mark Davis, a lab technician in the parking garage of Boston Medical Testing Lab. "What's so urgent?" Mark asked nervously. Blake glanced around the empty garage. "I need you to alter some DNA test results." "What?" Mark stepped back. "That's illegal, Blake." $20,000, Blake said, opening his briefcase to reveal stacks of cash. "All cash, untraceable. All you have to do is report that the second test shows I'm not the father of those kids." Mark stared at the money. "This could cost me my job, my license." "No one will know," Blake assured him. "Just me and you." At the Cape Cod house, dinner was served in a casual dining room overlooking the water. The quadruplets, exhausted from beach exploration, ate hungrily. "Emma eats vegetables without arguing," Sarah explained when Eleanor looked surprised at the girl's good behavior. "Then the others follow her lead." "She's a natural leader," William observed. "Like her grandfather." After dinner, while Martha helped the girls prepare for bed, the adults gathered in the living room with glasses of wine. "I checked the Boston Social Scene website," Jennifer reported. "They've posted 3 more articles about the Miller quadruplets today." "Vultures," Eleanor muttered. "It will pass," William said. "These society gossips always find something new to discuss." Sarah felt uncomfortable. "I never wanted this kind of attention." "Of course you didn't," Jennifer assured her, shooting a warning glance at her mother. "I'd like to know more about your education plans," William said to Sarah, changing the subject. "You mentioned online accounting courses?" Sarah nodded. "I'm 6 credits away from my associate's degree. Then I plan to continue toward a bachelor's in accounting." "A worthy goal," William approved. "What do you plan to do with it?" "Originally, I wanted to be a CPA," Sarah explained. "Now I'm focusing on something with stable hours for the girls. Maybe corporate accounting." The next morning, Sarah woke to the sound of piano music drifting up the stairs. She followed the sound to a sun-filled room where Eleanor sat at a baby grand piano with Ava beside her on the bench. "Place your fingers like this," Eleanor was saying, demonstrating a simple position. "Now press down gently." Ava pressed the keys, producing a clear note. Her face lit up with delight. Eleanor smiled. "Very good. My mother taught me to play when I was about your age." "Was she a good piano player?" Ava asked. "The best," Eleanor replied, her expression softening with memory. "She played in concert halls all over Europe." Sarah backed away silently, not wanting to interrupt this unexpected moment of connection. She found Jennifer on the back deck with coffee. "Beautiful morning," Jennifer said, offering Sarah a cup. "Thanks," Sarah replied, accepting the coffee and sitting beside her. "I just saw Eleanor giving Ava a piano lesson." Jennifer raised her eyebrows. "That's unexpected. Mother doesn't usually warm to people quickly." "I think Ava reminds her of her mother," Sarah suggested. Jennifer sipped her coffee. "Maybe. Or maybe she's finally seeing what she's been missing." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Jennifer spoke again. "You should know something about Blake," she said quietly. "You're not the first woman he's hurt." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. "Blake has always been Mother's favorite," Jennifer explained. "Father was busy building the company and Mother focused all her attention on Blake. He could do no wrong in her eyes." "And you?" Sarah asked. Jennifer shrugged. "I was the reliable one. The one who didn't need constant attention or forgiveness." She paused. "Don't get me wrong. I love my brother, but he's never had to face consequences for his actions." In Boston, Mark Davis arrived at work troubled by his late-night meeting with Blake. After signing into the lab, he immediately went to his supervisor's office. "I need to report something," Mark said nervously. "Blake Miller tried to bribe me last night to falsify DNA test results." Meanwhile, at Cape Cod, William invited Sarah to walk with him along the beach while the girls built sand castles under Jennifer's supervision. "Sarah, "I've been reviewing your work history and education," William began. "You have a natural talent for organization and numbers." "Thank you," Sarah replied, unsure where the conversation was heading. "Miller Enterprises has a community outreach division," William continued. "We fund educational programs, local initiatives. It could use someone with your perspective." Sarah stopped walking. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm suggesting it's a possibility," William clarified. "You have the mind for business and the heart we've been missing in that department." Sarah hesitated. "I don't want charity, Mr. Miller." "This isn't charity," William insisted. "It's recognition of talent. Think about it." They continued walking until William suddenly stopped, pressing his hand to his chest. "Are you all right?" Sarah asked, noticing his face had paled. "Just indigestion," William said, waving off her concern. "Had some spicy food yesterday." Sarah wasn't convinced. "You're sweating, and it's December. Let's head back to the house." During lunch, William barely touched his food. His breathing seemed labored, though he tried to hide it. "Dad, you look terrible," Jennifer said finally. "I'm fine," William insisted, but his words were followed by a wince of pain. Sarah recognized the symptoms immediately. "Mr. Miller, my grandfather had heart issues. You're showing the same signs he did before his heart attack. Shortness of breath, pain, cold sweat. Should we call a doctor?" Jennifer asked, alarmed. "We should go to the hospital now," Sarah insisted. "These symptoms are serious." Eleanor, returning from showing Ava the piano room, took one look at her husband and turned pale. "William, I think we need to go to the emergency room," Sarah told her firmly. "Right away." Within minutes, they were helping William to the car. Eleanor drove while Sarah sat beside William, monitoring his symptoms. "The girls?" William asked weakly. "Jennifer's watching them," Sarah assured him. "Just focus on staying calm." At Cape Cod Hospital, doctors quickly took William for examination. Sarah, Eleanor, and Jennifer waited anxiously in the emergency room. "How did you know?" Eleanor asked Sarah after a long silence. "My grandfather had heart disease," Sarah explained. "Those were the same symptoms he had." Eleanor nodded slowly. "Thank you for recognizing them." Hours later, a doctor approached them. "Mrs. Miller, your husband has a condition called angina. It's a type of chest pain caused by reduced blood flow to the heart." "Is it serious?" Eleanor asked. "It can be a warning sign for heart disease," the doctor explained. "But it's manageable with medication and lifestyle changes. We'd like to keep him overnight for observation." They were allowed to visit William, who looked tired but relieved. "The doctor says you've been hiding this condition," Eleanor accused him. "I didn't want to worry anyone," William admitted. "I've known about it for 6 months." "That was foolish," Eleanor scolded, but her voice was gentle. Before they left for the night, William asked to speak with Sarah alone. "Thank you for acting quickly today," he said. "The doctor said your insistence on immediate medical attention was important." "Anyone would have done the same," Sarah replied. William shook his head. "Not anyone. You have good judgment, Sarah. That's rare." He paused. "Think about what I said earlier. About Miller Enterprises. You belong there." Sarah nodded, unsure how to respond. As she turned to leave, William added, "And Sarah? The girls are lucky to have you as their mother. I hope you know that." Back at the Cape Cod house, Eleanor surprised Sarah by asking her to join her for tea in the kitchen. "I've been unfair to you," Eleanor admitted, stirring her tea slowly. "I've been investigating your background." "I know," Sarah replied. "Jennifer told me. What you've done, raising 4 children alone, continuing your education, maintaining your dignity, it's impressive," Eleanor said, clearly struggling with the compliment. Sarah saw something new in Eleanor's eyes: respect. The moment of understanding between Sarah and Eleanor was interrupted when Jennifer burst into the kitchen, her face flushed with excitement. "You need to see this," she said, holding up her tablet. On the screen was the Boston Globe website with a headline in large bold letters, Miller heir attempted to bribe lab technician in paternity scandal. What? Eleanor grabbed the tablet, her newfound respect for Sarah momentarily forgotten. Sarah read over Eleanor's shoulder. The article detailed how Blake Miller had offered $20,000 to a lab technician named Mark Davis to falsify DNA test results. The lab technician reported the incident to his supervisors, Jennifer explained. He even recorded their conversation. "This is a disaster," Eleanor whispered. The peaceful Cape Cod weekend ended abruptly. They packed quickly and drove back to Boston, where William was transferred to Massachusetts General Hospital for further observation. By Monday morning, the scandal had exploded across all Boston news outlets. Sarah kept the girls inside the apartment, away from the reporters who had somehow discovered where they were staying. Jennifer arrived at noon, looking stressed. Miller Enterprises stock has dropped 15% since the market opened this morning. Father has called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. From his hospital bed? Sarah asked, concerned. No, he's insisting on being discharged, Jennifer replied. The doctors aren't happy about it, but you know Father. Later that evening, Sarah received an unexpected call from Blake. "This is all your fault," he slurred, clearly intoxicated. "You've ruined everything." "You tried to falsify a DNA test, Blake," Sarah replied calmly. "That was your choice." "I'm coming over," he announced. "We need to talk face to face." Before Sarah could object, Blake hung up. She immediately called building security, then Jennifer. "Blake's on his way here, drunk," Sarah explained. "I've alerted security, but you should know." "I'm coming over," Jennifer decided. "Don't let him in." 20 minutes later, Blake appeared in the lobby of the apartment building. Security cameras showed him arguing with the doorman, his movements unsteady. "Call my father!" he shouted. "This is a Miller property. She doesn't belong here." The doorman remained firm. "I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, but Ms. Johnson has requested no visitors." Blake's voice grew louder. "I want to see my children. You can't keep them from me." The quadruplets, who were playing in the living room, heard the commotion through the lobby speakers that security had activated. "Why is the angry man yelling?" Sophia asked, her eyes wide with fear. Sarah gathered her daughters close. "He's just upset about grown-up things." "The security guards won't let him up here." Jennifer arrived just as Blake was being escorted outside by security personnel. She hurried upstairs to Sarah's apartment. "I saw everything," Jennifer said, breathless. "He's completely out of control." "The girls heard him," Sarah said quietly. They were frightened. Jennifer's expression hardened. "This ends now." The next morning, William Miller, against medical advice, left the hospital to attend the emergency board meeting at Miller Enterprises headquarters. Sarah received a call requesting her presence as well. "Me?" she asked in surprise. "Why would the board want me there?" "Father's orders," Jennifer explained. "I'll watch the girls." The Miller Enterprises boardroom was filled with tense executives when Sarah arrived. William sat at the head of the table looking pale but determined. Eleanor stood behind him, her face a careful mask. Blake slouched in a chair, nursing a coffee and avoiding eye contact. "Thank you for joining us, Ms. Johnson," William said formally. "Please, take a seat." Sarah sat nervously, aware of the curious stares from board members who clearly knew who she was from the news. "We face a crisis," William began. "Our stock has fallen dramatically. The Thompson Banking Group has withdrawn from all negotiations. Our public image is severely damaged." Blake shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "We need new leadership in our community outreach division," William continued. "Someone with integrity, determination, and intelligence." He looked directly at Sarah. "After reviewing Ms. Johnson's background and seeing her natural business acumen, I am offering her the position of Chief Operations Officer of Miller Enterprises Community Outreach Division." The room erupted in murmurs. One older board member spoke up. "With all due respect, William, this young woman was your maid 3 years ago. How can she possibly be qualified?" She was studying accounting before personal tragedy forced her to drop out, William explained. She has managed to raise 4 children while working multiple jobs and continuing her education. She shows better judgment and character than many executives I've known. Another board member frowned. The optics of this decision, given the current scandal— "The optics?" William interrupted. "Let's talk about optics. My son attempted to bribe a lab technician to deny his own children. Ms. Johnson, meanwhile, has raised those children with dignity despite limited resources." Blake suddenly stood up, his face red with anger. "This is ridiculous. You're choosing this maid over your own son?" "Blake, sit down," Eleanor ordered sharply. "No," Blake shouted. "You all think he's so perfect? Did you know he has a heart condition he's been hiding? He collapsed at Cape Cod. He won't live to see those girls grow up anyway." The room fell silent at this revelation. William's face paled further as all eyes turned to him. "That's enough, Blake," William said quietly. "You're replacing me with her?" Blake continued, pointing at Sarah. "After everything I've done for this company?" "What exactly have you done for this company?" William asked, his voice growing weaker. "Besides embezzle funds and damage our reputation?" Blake's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" "The audit committee found irregularities in the accounts you managed," William explained. "Money transferred to shell companies, all linked to offshore accounts in your name." "That's a lie!" Blake shouted. William placed a hand on his chest, his breathing becoming labored. "We have the documentation. You've been stealing from the company for years." "William?" Eleanor moved to her husband's side, concerned by his declining color. William tried to stand, then collapsed into his chair. "Call ambulance," he managed before losing consciousness. Chaos erupted in the boardroom. Someone called emergency services while Eleanor checked William's pulse. Sarah rushed to help, remembering her first aid training. "He's breathing, but his pulse is weak," Sarah reported. "We should loosen his tie and keep him comfortable until help arrives." Blake backed away, watching the scene with a mixture of shock and fear. The paramedics arrived within minutes, quickly stabilizing William before taking him back to Massachusetts General Hospital. Eleanor went with him in the ambulance while Sarah remained at the boardroom, uncertain what to do next. Jennifer called, having heard the news. "What happened?" "Blake revealed your father's heart condition during the board meeting," Sarah explained. "Your father got upset and collapsed. They've taken him back to the hospital." "And Blake?" Jennifer asked. "He's still here," Sarah replied, watching as Blake paced at the far end of the boardroom, ignoring the concerned stares of board members. "Don't leave," Jennifer advised. "The board needs someone level-headed there." To Sarah's surprise, several board members approached her after the ambulance left. "Miss Johnson, given the circumstances, perhaps you could tell us more about this position William proposed for you," one woman suggested. Sarah spent the next hour explaining her background and her ideas for community outreach programs. Despite her nervousness, she found the board members receptive. "You have practical experience most executives lack," an older man commented. "You understand what real people need." By evening, William was stabilized but being kept for observation. Eleanor, who had remained at the hospital, made a decision that surprised everyone. She called a press conference. Standing before cameras and reporters outside Massachusetts General Hospital, Eleanor Miller spoke clearly and confidently. "My husband is in stable condition and receiving excellent care," she began. "During this time, Miller Enterprises will continue operations under the direction of our executive team. My son Blake Miller will be taking an indefinite leave of absence." She paused, then continued. "I would also like to acknowledge my 4 granddaughters, Emma, Olivia, Ava, and Sophia Johnson. They are Miller family members, and we are committed to ensuring their well-being." Sarah watched the press conference on television from the apartment, stunned by Eleanor's public acknowledgement. Jennifer arrived shortly after, bringing dinner for everyone. "Mother just officially recognized the girls," she said, amazed. "I never thought I'd see it." Everything is happening so fast, Sarah replied, watching her daughters eat spaghetti at the kitchen table. This morning I was just Sarah Johnson, single mother. Now I'm potentially a corporate executive with children publicly acknowledged by one of Boston's wealthiest families. Jennifer squeezed her hand. Father saw something in you from the beginning. And after what happened with Blake today, Mother finally sees it too. Later that night, after putting the girls to bed, Sarah visited William in the hospital. He was awake, though tired. "You caused quite a stir in the boardroom today," Sarah said, sitting beside his bed. William smiled weakly. "Did they give you a hard time after I left?" "Actually, they seemed interested in hearing my ideas," Sarah admitted. "Good," William nodded. "Sarah, I need to ask you something important." "What is it?" William's expression grew serious. "Don't let Blake destroy what we've built. The company, the family, he's been taking from both for too long." "I don't understand," Sarah replied, confused. "The financial irregularities I mentioned," William explained. "They're worse than I revealed. Blake has been systematically bleeding the company for years." Sarah stared at William in shock. "Bleeding the company? How?" "The community outreach accounts," William explained weakly. "Blake managed those funds for 5 years. The preliminary audit shows money disappearing through complicated transfers." "How much money?" Sarah asked. William sighed. "Possibly millions. I need someone I trust to look deeper, someone with accounting skills who isn't already loyal to Blake." Sarah understood immediately. "That's why you offered me the position." "Partly," William admitted, "but I meant what I said about your qualifications." "Will you help me, Sarah?" Sarah nodded. "I'll do whatever I can." The next morning, Sarah entered Miller Enterprises headquarters as an employee, not a visitor. Jennifer met her in the lobby. "Ready for your first official day?" Jennifer asked. "Honestly? No," Sarah replied, "but I'll manage." Jennifer led her to a spacious office on the 20th floor. "This is yours now. All Community Outreach Division files have been transferred to your computer." Sarah looked around the office, larger than her entire apartment in Portland. "The girls are with a nanny?" "Yes, Mother interviewed her personally," Jennifer replied. "Surprisingly, Mother is spending a lot of time with them too." Sarah raised her eyebrows in surprise. "I know," Jennifer laughed, "especially with Ava." Mother actually moved her piano so Ava could practice at the mansion. After Jennifer left, Sarah sat at the large desk and turned on the computer. She began reviewing the Community Outreach Division's financial records from the past 5 years. By lunchtime, she had found her first red flag, a recurring payment to a company called BM Educational Consultants for services never clearly defined. "BM," Sarah whispered. "Blake Miller." She dug deeper, finding more suspicious companies: Miller Future Holdings, Blue Bay Investments, and Beacon Capital Group. All received regular payments from the community outreach funds for vague services. That evening, Sarah visited the hospital again, bringing her laptop to show William what she'd found. "These companies," she explained, showing him a spreadsheet. "They all have similar payment patterns. Large amounts transferred quarterly for services that aren't documented." William nodded. "I suspected as much. Blake created these shell companies to funnel money from Miller Enterprises. I'd need access to more financial records to confirm where the money went after these companies received it," Sarah explained. "Jennifer can help with that," William said. "But be careful. Blake still has allies in the company." After putting the girls to bed that night, Sarah called Jennifer. "I found something," Sarah began, "but I need more access to follow the money trail." "Come to my apartment tomorrow night," Jennifer suggested. "We can access the financial systems remotely without anyone watching." The next day, Eleanor surprised Sarah by calling her at work. "Ava is asking for piano lessons," Eleanor said without preamble. "I'd like to arrange for a proper teacher." "That's very generous," Sarah replied. caught off guard by Eleanor's interest. "But I can't afford—" "I'm not asking you to pay," Eleanor interrupted. "She's my granddaughter. She has musical talent that should be nurtured." Sarah hesitated. "I'd need to be there for the lessons." "Of course," Eleanor agreed. "Come to the mansion after work. We'll discuss it over dinner. Bring all the girls." That evening, Sarah and the quadruplets had their first family dinner at the Miller mansion without William present. Eleanor had instructed the chef to make child-friendly food. "This house is huge," Emma commented as they sat at the dining table. "Emma," Sarah warned, "that's not polite." "It's all right," Eleanor said. "It is indeed a very large house. Too large for just me while William is in the hospital." After dinner, Eleanor led Ava to the piano room where the grand piano now sat in the center. "I've arranged for Professor James Chen from Berklee College of Music to evaluate Ava's aptitude," Eleanor explained to Sarah. "Berklee College of Music?" Sarah asked, surprised. "That's a prestigious school." "Only the best for a Miller," Eleanor replied simply. Later that night, after the girls were asleep in one of the mansion's guest rooms, Sarah went to Jennifer's apartment with her laptop. "I've found at least 6 suspicious companies," Sarah explained, showing Jennifer her findings, "all receiving regular payments from the community outreach funds." Jennifer logged into the company's financial system using her executive credentials. "Let's see where the money went from these shell companies." Working together until past midnight, they traced transfers from the shell companies to accounts in the Cayman Islands. All the accounts had connections to Blake. "This is worse than I thought," Jennifer said, staring at the screen. "He's been stealing from the company for years. Millions of dollars." "But why?" Sarah wondered. "He's already wealthy." "The Thompson merger," Jennifer realized suddenly. "He needed their banking connections to help hide his tracks. When you showed up with the girls and threatened the merger, I became a threat to more than just his reputation," Sarah finished. The next morning, Sarah received a call from William's nurse. "Mr. Miller is asking for you and his granddaughters to visit." Sarah brought the quadruplets to the hospital that afternoon. They were nervous about the medical equipment, but William's warm greeting put them at ease. "Come here, girls," he said from his hospital bed. "I want to tell you a story about how I built Miller Enterprises." The girls sat around his bed while William explained in simple terms how he started his company. "I began with just one computer in a small room," he told them. "I fixed problems for other businesses. Then I hired one person to help me, then another." Emma, always curious, asked the most questions. "Did you have a big office like Mommy has now?" William chuckled. "Not at first. My first office was smaller than your bedroom." While the girls were distracted by a nurse bringing juice, William spoke quietly to Sarah. "How is the investigation going?" "We've traced money to accounts in the Cayman Islands," Sarah replied softly. "All linked to Blake." William nodded grimly. "I feared as much. The board needs to know, but not until we have everything documented." 2 days later, Sarah and Jennifer had gathered enough evidence to present to Eleanor. They requested a private meeting at the mansion. "Mother, we need to show you something," Jennifer began carefully. Eleanor sat rigidly in her chair. "This is about Blake, isn't it?" Sarah opened her laptop. "We found evidence that Blake has been embezzling from Miller Enterprises for years." "That's a serious accusation," Eleanor said coldly. "It is," Sarah agreed. "That's why we've documented everything thoroughly." For the next hour, they showed Eleanor the financial records, transfers, and connections to Blake's offshore accounts. At first, Eleanor was defensive, questioning every document. Gradually, her resistance crumbled as the evidence mounted. "Why?" she finally asked, her voice barely audible. "He has everything. Why would he steal?" "We think he was planning to leave," Jennifer explained gently, "building a nest egg separate from family money that couldn't be tracked or controlled." Eleanor sat silently for a long moment. "What do we do now?" "We need to present this to the board," Sarah suggested, "and potentially to the authorities." No, Eleanor said firmly. Not yet. William needs to be part of this decision. He should be released from the hospital tomorrow. Meanwhile, Blake had grown increasingly paranoid. Locked out of company systems and banned from the office, he watched news reports about Miller Enterprises from his apartment. Miller Enterprises appoints new community outreach executive. Read one headline, showing Sarah's picture. Blake threw his glass at the television screen. After several drinks, he made a decision. There had to be something in his father's private files he could use as leverage. Past midnight, Blake used his key to enter the family mansion. The security system recognized his code, allowing him inside without triggering alarms. He went directly to William's home office and began searching through files. There has to be something, Blake muttered, pulling open drawers and rifling through folders. In the bottom drawer of William's desk, Blake found a locked box. He broke it open with a letter opener and discovered old documents inside. "What's this?" Blake said, reading through yellowed papers. The documents revealed something Blake had never known. William Miller hadn't come from wealth as Blake had always believed. He had grown up in a working-class family in Chicago. His first business loan came from Eleanor's father, a fact the family had hidden to maintain their social standing. So the great William Miller was nothing but a poor kid who married into money. Blake laughed bitterly. Perfect. What Blake didn't know was that after his recent outburst, Jennifer had installed small security cameras in William's office. The entire break-in was being recorded, with footage automatically forwarded to Jennifer's phone. In her apartment across town, Jennifer woke to alert notifications. She watched in disbelief as Blake ransacked their father's office. Jennifer immediately called Sarah, then Eleanor. Blake broke into father's office, she told them both. "I'm watching him right now on the security feed." "I'm on my way," Eleanor replied, her voice firm with resolve. Sarah arrived at the mansion just as Eleanor did. Together with Jennifer, who had also rushed over, they watched the live security footage on Jennifer's phone. "Should we call the police?" Sarah asked. Eleanor took a deep breath. "No, this is still my son. Let me speak to him first." The three women walked to William's office. Eleanor pushed open the door to find Blake still there, reading through the old documents. "Hello, Blake," Eleanor said quietly. "What exactly are you looking for?" Blake looked up with surprise, then quickly recovered his composure. "Mother, what a surprise to see you here at this hour." "I live here," Eleanor replied coldly. "You, however, are trespassing." Blake held up the old documents. "Did you know about this? That father came from nothing? That your father gave him his start?" "Of course I knew," Eleanor said. "William never hid his background from me." Jennifer stepped into the room, her phone still recording. "The question is, what are you doing breaking into father's office in the middle of the night?" Blake noticed Sarah standing in the doorway and sneered. "Of course you brought her. Your new favorite charity case." "We have you on camera, Blake," Jennifer said, holding up her phone. "Breaking and entering after everything else you've done." Blake laughed bitterly. "What are you going to do? Call the police on me? Your own son?" He looked at Eleanor. Eleanor's face showed no emotion as she pulled out her phone. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do." Blake's smile faded. "You're bluffing." Eleanor dialed and put the phone to her ear. "This is Eleanor Miller. I need to report a break-in at 27 Beacon Hill Avenue. The intruder is still on the premises." Blake stared in disbelief. "Mother, have you lost your mind?" "No, Blake," Eleanor replied, her voice steady. "For the first time in years, I'm seeing clearly. You've stolen from the company. You've lied repeatedly. You abandoned your own children." 2 hours later, Boston police officers led Blake from the mansion in handcuffs. Reporters, somehow already alerted, captured photos of the humiliating arrest. "You'll regret this!" Blake shouted as the officers placed him in the police car. The next morning, William was released from the hospital. Sarah picked him up in her minivan with the girls buckled into their car seats in the back. "Grandpa!" They called in unison when William appeared in a wheelchair pushed by a nurse. "Hospital rules," William explained about the wheelchair. I can walk just fine." Once they were in the car, Sarah filled William in on everything that had happened overnight. "Blake was arrested?" William asked, shocked. "Eleanor called the police herself," Sarah confirmed. "They have him on breaking and entering charges, but Jennifer is working with the company attorneys about the embezzlement evidence too." William shook his head sadly. "I never thought it would come to this." Back at the mansion, Eleanor and Jennifer waited with a stack of documents. "Welcome home," Eleanor said, kissing William's cheek. "We have much to discuss." In William's study, the four adults reviewed all the evidence against Blake while the quadruplets played in the garden under Martha's supervision. "The board needs to be informed immediately," William decided. "We'll call an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning." "Blake was released on bail this morning," Jennifer reported, checking her phone. "His lawyer posted it." "He'll try something," Eleanor predicted. "He always does when he's cornered." The following morning, Miller Enterprises board members gathered in the main conference room. William, still looking pale but determined, sat at the head of the table. Sarah sat nervously beside Jennifer, while Eleanor stood behind William's chair. "Thank you all for coming," William began. "We face a difficult situation regarding my son, Blake." William presented the evidence of Blake's embezzlement, including Sarah and Jennifer's detailed financial analysis. "This is why I appointed Miss Johnson to lead our community outreach division," William explained. "Her accounting background helped uncover what others missed or chose to ignore." Several board members looked uncomfortable. "With respect, William," said Richard Thornton, an older board member. "While this evidence is troubling, Ms. Johnson's rapid rise from maid to executive still raises questions. People are talking." "Let them talk," William replied firmly. "Sarah saved my life by recognizing my heart symptoms. She uncovered financial fraud that our own auditors missed. She raised 4 children while working multiple jobs and continuing her education." Eleanor stepped forward, surprising everyone. "I was wrong about Ms. Johnson," she admitted to the board. "I let prejudice cloud my judgment. Her background in accounting and her integrity are exactly what this company needs." Richard Thornton seemed taken aback by Eleanor's support. "Well, if you both feel so strongly—" "We do," William confirmed. "Sarah stays. And as for Blake, we need to vote on his permanent removal from all company positions." The vote was unanimous. Blake Miller was officially removed from Miller Enterprises. That afternoon, news of Blake's removal hit the media. Financial reporters camped outside company headquarters while society columnists speculated about the family drama. At the mansion, William received a call from the district attorney's office. "They're offering Blake a plea deal," William told the others after hanging up. "Reduced charges if he agrees to leave Massachusetts and make restitution." "Will he take it?" Jennifer asked. "His lawyer thinks he will," William replied. "He's facing serious jail time otherwise." Meanwhile, Sarah faced a new challenge: enrolling the quadruplets in school. William had suggested Brookline Academy, an exclusive private school near the mansion. "They're 4 years old," Sarah protested. "Isn't it too soon for such a formal environment? They'll be starting kindergarten soon anyway," Eleanor pointed out. "Brookline has an excellent early education program." Sarah visited the school with the girls. The campus was beautiful, with small class sizes and impressive facilities. The headmaster welcomed them personally. "We'd be honored to have the Miller quadruplets join us," Headmaster Phillips said, smiling at the 4 identical little girls. "Johnson," Sarah corrected gently. "Their last name is Johnson." The headmaster looked confused. "Of course. My apologies." Emma and Olivia seemed excited about the school, especially the science room with its collection of rocks and plants. Ava and Sophia, however, clung to Sarah's hands, overwhelmed by the new environment. "Some adjust more quickly than others," the headmaster assured Sarah. "We're experienced with helping children transition." That evening, Sarah helped Sophia with her reading while the other girls played nearby. "Will we go to that new school?" Sophia asked quietly. "Would you like to?" Sarah asked. Sophia shrugged. "Emma and Olivia want to, but it's very big." Sometimes new things can feel scary, Sarah acknowledged, but I'll be with you every step. 2 days later, Blake's lawyer announced he had accepted a plea deal. He would make financial restitution, serve probation, and leave Massachusetts for at least 5 years. On his last day in Boston, Blake made one final attempt to salvage his reputation. He contacted Vanessa Thompson, hoping to explain his side of the story. They met at a hotel bar downtown. Vanessa looked elegant but distant as Blake approached. "Thank you for meeting me," Blake said, sitting across from her. "I wanted to explain what really happened." "I'm listening," Vanessa replied coolly. "My father has been showing signs of dementia," Blake lied. "He's been making irrational decisions, like giving that maid an executive position." "Sarah Johnson," Vanessa corrected. "Yes, her," Blake continued. "She's manipulating my father, taking advantage of his condition." "Is that so?" Vanessa asked, her hand moving to her purse. "I was trying to protect the company," Blake insisted. "That's why I created those offshore accounts, to safeguard assets until father could be declared incompetent." Vanessa pulled out her phone. "That's interesting, because I've had you investigated, Blake. You've been stealing from Miller Enterprises for years, and I'm not the only woman you've been seeing, am I?" Blake's face paled. "What are you talking about? Rebecca Jones in New York, Melissa Chen in Chicago. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Vanessa pressed a button on her phone. "I've been recording this conversation, by the way." She stood up. "Goodbye, Blake. Enjoy California." Vanessa delivered the recording to William the next day. "I thought you should know what your son is saying about you," she explained. With Blake's departure imminent, William, Eleanor, and Sarah met with family attorneys to establish legal guardianship arrangements for the quadruplets. "We need to ensure the girls will be cared for regardless of what happens to any of us," William explained. The lawyers drafted documents naming William and Eleanor as secondary guardians in the event of Sarah's incapacitation, with Jennifer as a third option. "This doesn't mean we're taking control," William assured Sarah. "You are their mother. We're simply creating a safety net." After the meeting, Eleanor asked Sarah to join her in the garden. They walked silently for a moment before Eleanor spoke. "I was cruel to you," Eleanor admitted. 3 years ago when Blake told us you were pregnant, and again when you returned with the girls." "You were protecting your family," Sarah replied. "The wrong way," Eleanor said. "I judged you without knowing you. I was wrong about you, Sarah. You've given this family a future when my son would have destroyed it." Sarah was stunned by the apology. "Thank you for saying that. I'd like another chance," Eleanor continued, "to be a proper grandmother to those girls. To make amends to you." "I'd like that," Sarah agreed. "The girls deserve to know all parts of their heritage." As they turned back toward the house, they could see William sitting on the patio, watching Emma arrange stones in a pattern only she understood. Olivia read a picture book to Sophia, while Ava hummed a tune she had learned on the piano. "They're remarkable children," Eleanor observed. "Yes," Sarah agreed, "they are." 1 year later, Sarah stood in her office at Miller Enterprises looking out at the Boston skyline. On her desk sat a framed photograph of the quadruplets, now 5 years old, sitting on the lawn of the Miller mansion with William and Eleanor behind them. So much had changed in 12 months. The door opened and Jennifer walked in, carrying 2 coffee cups. "Ready for the big day?" The South Boston Educational Center opens in 3 hours. Sarah accepted the coffee gratefully. "Almost. Just reviewing my speech one last time." The South Boston Educational Center was Sarah's first major project as head of community outreach, a place offering free tutoring, computer access, and career counseling to underprivileged youth. She had designed it based on resources she wished she'd had after dropping out of college. "The girls are excited about the birthday party tomorrow," Jennifer mentioned. "Eleanor has been planning it for weeks." "I told her to keep it simple," Sarah sighed. But she's Eleanor Miller," Jennifer finished with a smile. Simple isn't in her vocabulary. Later that morning, Sarah stood beside William as they cut the ribbon for the new educational center. Local news cameras captured the moment, and a crowd of community members applauded. "This center will provide opportunities for hundreds of young people in South Boston," Sarah explained to a reporter. "Access to education shouldn't depend on your zip code or family income." William watched proudly as Sarah answered questions with confidence and clarity. His health had stabilized with medication and a less stressful schedule. He still served as chairman of Miller Enterprises, but had delegated many day-to-day responsibilities. "You've accomplished more in 1 year than most executives do in 5, William told Sarah as they drove back to the office. "The board is impressed." "I had good motivation," Sarah replied. "Every time I visit a school or community center, I remember what it felt like to have my own education interrupted." That evening, the quadruplets celebrated their 5th birthday in the mansion's garden. Despite Sarah's request for simplicity, Eleanor had arranged an elaborate party with a professional photographer, personalized cakes for each girl, and even a small petting zoo. "Grandma, look at the baby goat," Sophia called excitedly, no longer the shy child she had been a year ago. Eleanor, dressed impeccably as always, didn't hesitate to kneel beside Sophia to pet the tiny animal. "He's very sweet, isn't he?" Across the lawn, William sat with Emma, examining the small microscope he'd given her as a gift. "See how the leaf cells form patterns?" he explained patiently. "Can I take samples from all the plants in the garden?" Emma asked, already scientific at 5. "Of course," William agreed. "We can catalog them together." Olivia was organizing the other children into a game she'd invented, naturally taking charge as she always did. Meanwhile, Ava showed her music teacher, Professor Chen, how she could already play a simple Bach minuet on the portable keyboard set up for the party. Sarah watched it all with a mixture of amazement and gratitude. She and the girls now lived in a renovated wing of the mansion, close enough for family interactions but separate enough to maintain their own household routines. As the party wound down, the house phone rang. Martha answered, then approached Sarah. "It's Mr. Blake," she said quietly, "his weekly call for the girls." Sarah nodded and gathered her daughters. They moved to the living room where she placed the call on speakerphone. "Happy birthday, girls." Blake's voice came through clearly from California. "Thank you, Daddy," they responded in unison, a phrase Sarah had taught them despite her complicated feelings about their father. "Did you get the presents I sent?" Blake asked. "Yes," Emma replied. "I got a solar system model. It has all the planets." "I got a dollhouse," Olivia added. "I got ballet shoes," said Ava. "I got books about animals," Sophia finished. "That's wonderful," Blake said. "I'll see you on my visit next month, okay?" After brief goodbyes, Sarah ended the call. These supervised phone conversations had become part of their routine. Blake had moved to San Diego after his plea deal and was working for a friend's technology startup. His occasional visits to the girls were always supervised by Sarah or Jennifer. The therapy Blake had been required to attend as part of his plea agreement seemed to be having some effect. His interactions with the girls had gradually become less awkward and more genuine. He would never be the father Sarah had once hoped he might be, but he was making an effort. Later that week, Jennifer and Sarah had their weekly lunch at a cafe near the office. "Remember our first shopping trip after you came back to Boston?" Jennifer asked. "When you were terrified of spending money at those boutiques?" Sarah laughed. "I still calculate the cost per wear of everything I buy." "Some habits die hard," Jennifer agreed. "Speaking of which, have you finished reviewing applications for the scholarship program?" Sarah nodded. 20 students will receive full funding for community college. The board approved the budget yesterday. 20 lives changed, Jennifer mused. "That's what I love about what you're doing. It's not abstract. It's real help for real people." The following weekend, preparations for the annual Miller Foundation Gala were underway. This year's event would be different from previous galas, smaller and focused on community impact rather than social prestige. Sarah helped the quadruplets pick out their dresses for the event. They had designed them together with a local dressmaker, each dress reflecting the girl's personality while coordinating with her sisters. "Will there be dancing?" Ava asked, twirling in her lavender dress. "Yes, and music too," Sarah promised. "Will people stare at us again?" Sophia wondered, more perceptive than most children her age. Sarah knelt to meet her eyes. "They might look because you and your sisters are so beautiful. But this time, everyone knows who you are. You belong there." The night of the gala arrived. The Miller mansion was decorated elegantly but not extravagantly. The guest list included community leaders, educators, and business partners rather than just Boston's social elite. The quadruplets sat at a table with William and Eleanor, watching proudly as Sarah received an award for her work with the Community Outreach Division. Sarah approached the podium, remembering how differently she had entered this same room 3 years earlier. "Thank you for this honor," she began. "When I started working with Miller Enterprises, I had one goal: to create opportunities for people who needed second chances. Because sometimes life gives us unexpected detours." She looked at her daughters and the Millers. "What matters is not the path we planned, but the journey we embrace and the truth we choose to live by." The Miller Foundation's new education initiatives aren't just about funding. They're about believing that everyone deserves the chance to build their future regardless of their past. After the gala, when the girls were asleep, Sarah sat in the small study of her wing of the mansion. Martha brought her an envelope that had arrived in the day's mail. "It has a California postmark," Martha noted before leaving. Sarah opened the envelope to find a letter from Blake. Unlike his usual brief notes that accompanied gifts for the girls, this one was several pages long. "Dear Sarah," it began, "I've written this letter many times in my head over the past year. Each version seemed inadequate. How do you apologize for the kind of damage I've caused? But my therapist says I need to try anyway, so here it is. I'm sorry, truly sorry." The letter continued, expressing genuine remorse not just for his treatment of Sarah but for his failure as a father and son. Blake explained that therapy had forced him to confront his sense of entitlement and the damage it had caused. "I don't expect forgiveness," he wrote, "but I want you to know I'm working to become someone better. Someone our daughters won't be ashamed to know. Someday, when I've made more progress, I might return to Boston, not to reclaim my old life, but to be a better father to Emma, Olivia, Ava, and Sophia." Sarah folded the letter thoughtfully. She would share it with William and Eleanor tomorrow. Over the past year, they had become her partners in parenting and in healing old wounds. The next morning, Sarah found Eleanor in the music room with Ava, listening as the child practiced her scales. Sarah had come to recognize that music was how Eleanor expressed the emotions she struggled to verbalize. "That's lovely, Ava," Eleanor praised when the girl finished. "You're improving every day." Ava beamed at her grandmother's approval. "Can we try the new piece now?" "Of course," Eleanor nodded, placing sheet music on the piano stand. Sarah watched from the doorway, reminded again of how much had changed. In another part of the house, William and Jennifer were reviewing business proposals in his study, occasionally looking out the window where Emma, Olivia, and Sophia were planting flowers in the garden. That evening, after tucking her daughters into bed, Sarah sat on the edge of Sophia's bed a bit longer. "Mommy?" Sophia asked sleepily. "Are we a real family now?" Sarah smiled and brushed the hair from her daughter's forehead. "We've always been a real family, sweetheart. We just needed everyone else to catch up." Sophia considered this, then nodded with satisfaction before closing her eyes. Sarah quietly closed the girls' bedroom door and paused in the hallway, listening to the soft sounds of her daughter's breathing. From downstairs, she could hear William and Eleanor discussing tomorrow's board meeting where Sarah would present her expanded educational program proposal. 3 years ago, she had returned to Boston seeking acknowledgement for her daughters. Instead, she had found something no one expected: A new definition of family built not on social expectations but on truth, forgiveness, and second chances. Sarah headed downstairs to join William and Eleanor, ready to continue building the future that had begun with one brave decision and 4 identical little girls in red dresses. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen